Hello there. I'm Rob Hudson. I'm a partner with the law firm Frost Brown Todd, and I'm also a volunteer with the Northern Kentucky Bar Association. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the NKBA Legend Series. In this series, we interview distinguished Northern Kentucky, Greater Cincinnati lawyers. And what we hope to do is to help elevate the profession with a particular focus on what it takes to become excellent attorneys, to have full plates of work, to serve the profession and serve others. The program today is being recorded. It'll be made available to help guide the next generation of lawyers in our region. And for live attendees, be sure to post your questions on the Q&A or chat features, and I'll ask them at the end of the program, time permitting. One of the things we've tried to do with this program is to hear from attorneys in various areas of practice with different types of firms, with different success stories. And so we're all here on this crisp fall day today to interview Will Zevely, criminal defense attorney extraordinaire in Northern Kentucky and Southern Ohio for several decades now, still going as strong as ever. He's a leader of the Florence firm Buzald Funk Zevely PSC. He concentrates his practice, again, in criminal law and some domestic relations as well. Will has literally defended thousands of clients in criminal matters, and he's given back to the profession considerably. His service to the profession includes work for the Northern Kentucky Bar Foundation, leading to his receipt of the Northern Kentucky Bar Foundation Lifetime Achievement Award. He received the NKBA Distinguished Lawyer Award, which is the NKBA's highest honor for a lawyer. He served for more than a decade as the director of the Kentucky Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and his service to the community included incorporating Northern Kentucky's first state-funded public defender program. His achievements include co-authoring the Driving Under the Influence Law book. Will has always been a great friend to the NKBA. He's been a frequent speaker through the years, both for us and for the KBA. Will, welcome to the Legends program. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invite. I have to find out who thinks I'm distinguished. I like to put that on a list somewhere so I can remember.
Well, lots of people do. All of us do. And I had the pleasure of speaking with you a bit about this program the other day, and I loved hearing about your early character building experiences growing up with your family in Erlanger, Kentucky. Can you share some of that with us?
Sure. So we grew up on Timberlake in a little house on the wrong side of the tracks. My dad was a chemist. My mom was a history major, although she didn't teach. She just cooked and did what women did back in those days, many moons ago. And that was about it. We did a lot of family things together and then ultimately changed directions.
Well, what I enjoyed hearing about was you shared with me one of the ways your father helped you and your siblings build character through survivalist type activities. I thought that was extraordinary.
Yeah, my dad, when we were kids, my dad would take me and my brother, and I think we were somewhere around 12 or 14, and he'd take us down to Lake Cumberland. We had this island that he used to put us out on, and we had tents, and back then you could put these things up and nobody'd ever bother them. We just left them up all summer long. And he'd just drop us off there and go back home, and he'd come back next week and pick us up. So
he just had figured out, guys, right?
If people knew what he was doing back then, he'd have been in DNA court. So, but we enjoyed it.
Well, and you mentioned that your father was a chemist. You didn't come to the law directly. I understand you followed in your dad's footsteps. I'd love to hear about some of your achievements, accomplishments, and the fun you had as a chemist.
Well, that's why I'm a lawyer, because I didn't have any. So I worked for the Atomic Energy Commission, and the reason I ended up there was because it was that or Vietnam. So when I joined the Monsanto people, then I was deferred. So they, because of my job and what I did, which was analytical research on atomic energy devices, so that got me a occupational deferment, and then I started going to law school. I didn't have anything else to do, so I decided I'd try it.
Well, and what were some of the motivations that you had? I know for me, I was looking at the prospect of practicing accountancy. Didn't seem to be the most exciting career choice to me at the time, so law school seemed like a nice opportunity. What inspired you to go in that direction?
Lack of money, people telling me what to do that didn't know anything. Just got tired of taking orders from people. And I would, when I finally graduated from undergraduate school, what Monsanto did was they'd pay for 75% of the bill for everything. And then if you graduated, they paid you the 25% all the way back. Well, the way that worked out, I ended up with about 20 grand in my pocket when I walked out the door and said, "Thank you, gentlemen, for giving me the opportunity to do what I want to do and get the hell out of here."
Well, what was there something though in your background that had some connection with the law in particular? Because there are lots of different things you could have done. What piqued your curiosity?
Well, I'd get off work after I graduated. I from undergraduate school, became a chemist, drive home and watch Perry Mason shows in black and white on the TV. And I thought, this looks like pretty much fun. Maybe I'll try it. So that's kind of how I got in that direction. And then I thought, well, I don't even know how to do it. So I looked up the law school's address, and I was the final class to graduate from the YMCA building in Cincinnati. So they didn't have their own building. We were on the fourth floor, as I recall, of the YMCA. So I went down there and went up to the desk, and the lady says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Sure, I've got an interest in going to law school." And she said, "Well, that's great. Have you taken the LSAT?" And I said, "The what?" So I hadn't, and she says, "That's okay. You can come back and do it another time." So she said, "That'll be $50." And I said, "Well, I don't have it." She said, "That's okay. You can pay it another time." So I started law school without ever taking the LSAT or paying the entrance fee. So today I probably wouldn't even be a lawyer because I couldn't get in.
Well, and so you get in that fashion, and tell me, were you kind of a natural at law school from the get-go? Were you like a fish in water, or how did things develop?
I grew up as a geek, and that's kind of the way I always was. So I did things the old-fashioned way. So ignorant me, I used to read all the cases. I'd outline them, put them in plastic covers, while everybody else was using these Nord books, and they'd get their outlines already done. They were making A's. I was barely getting by, and I said, "Screw this shit. I'm going to start doing what they were doing." So I started using those outlines, and after that, I did okay.
Well, and the way your career started in the law, I think, is interesting. For me, after law school, I kind of wrote briefs in a library for a couple of years. I don't think anyone wanted to trust me with a client matter or a client meeting. And it was, it was a couple of 3 years before I even took a deposition. But how did you get started? How did you jump in and begin to become a proficient lawyer?
I don't know about the proficient part. That took a while. How I made it or got by was my best friend in life was the former Commonwealth attorney in Boone County, Willie Mathis. Now, unless there's a bunch of old farts out there in the audience, nobody will remember who Willie was. But Willie was a really competitive guy. And I used to race motorcycles. And he decided, well, I think I want to race motorcycles too. So we'd work on our bikes all weekend. We'd race. And then he says to me, "You take care of my bike," because he had no clue how to do it. I used to sell Kawasaki motorcycles, had a dealership, and I take care of his bike and get it ready to race. And he says, "If you take care of my bike and keep me up and running, then I will see that you don't starve as a lawyer." So he sent me business, and I fixed his motorcycle. So that's how I got started.
So you got started working on actual cases for actual clients, handling, kind of taking the lead from time to time, even early on, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, I did. Right.
Well, so what you get started in that way, but then, you end up heavily focused on criminal matters. I guess probably from fairly early on. What led you in that direction?
I did what came my way. So if people came through the door and I needed work to do and needed to feed the family, then I'd take those cases. So that's kind of, I did what came through the door. Now, I can't specifically remember how the public defender system started out here, but I know I'm the one that incorporated it. I'm the one that started it. It was me. And then after a while, it was me and Larry Krigler, who was the former county attorney, and a couple at Burr Travis got in the boat and helped us. And there were 5 of us ultimately that did the work for years and years and years. And that's kind of what we did. So we chopped up the pie that we got, which was not a very big pie back then. And that's where we started it.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you learned a lot by doing, but what other ways did you seek, training, assistance, mentoring, that sort of
I
thing?
had 2, again, Willie Mathis helped me tremendously because I was the public defender, he was the prosecutor. So it's not like it was today or is today where nobody gets along. Back then, everybody got along, and Willie and I would war all day long, 7 days a week. And then at the end of the day, we'd go out and have a drink and go race. So everybody was friendly, no fights, everybody got along. It was very nice.
Did you
So
have an? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, there was another mentor I wanted to talk about was Asa Rouse. And Ace is an old guy. Probably nobody knows him except, again, the real old people. Ace used to be the trial commissioner in Boone County. Now, the trial commissioner was the county judge who didn't want to sit and try criminal cases, would appoint his trusty second to go in there and be the judge. So that was Asa. So Asa, and he'd come to all our races. Him and Willie were all partners. And he would, at the end of the court day, we'd go out and eat, and he'd say, "Here's what you did wrong, and here's what you did right. Now let's try and see if you can't do better tomorrow." So kind of interesting that the judge would be my mentor, but that's the way it worked out.
Well, and one of the things that helped me as a newer lawyer is, and I had the sort of the benefit of being able to just access a few videotapes of other people trying cases. Did, did you go out and, did you watch trials, or
Well,
how did?
I was a chemist, and I had absolutely no clue except for Perry Mason how to be a lawyer. So what I did was find the best criminal lawyers I could find, and I'd steal shit from them. So I'd go watch their trials and figure out what worked for me and steal it from those lawyers. And that's how I got my start as far as learning how to be a decent, proficient lawyer.
Well, I mean, how'd you find out that they were trying cases? Did you know the clerks? Did you just ask, or did you just happen to know coincidentally?
Well, back then, which is different than it is now, there were a lot of cases tried. So if you just hang around the courtroom, you could figure it out. And it didn't take you very long. You'd sit in on one person. If they weren't very talented, you could learn pretty quickly that's not the one you wanted to follow. And then you'd go to a different one. You keep finding them until you found 4 or 5 people who knew what they were doing. And that's how I learned how to practice law.
Well, part of what we've done through this program, we've asked different people we've interviewed to pass along tips. And I know you've taught trial practice and seminars for many years. What do you think are some of the keys for a lawyer to become a terrific litigator?
The thing I think most lawyers don't do is prepare. They go to court unprepared. They don't know what the facts are. They haven't done their discovery, so they have no earthly clue how it's going to shake out. If you just become prepared, go to court prepared, the judges respect you, you'll get better rulings, you'll know what you're talking about, and you won't look like an idiot.
So from your perspective, it's about the perspiration associated with being extraordinarily well prepared, right?
Yes, and I think things have changed that way around the practice of law these days because people just won't do it. If I was in town, I was working. Like Mike, my partner McMain, works more now than I do, but we worked 70, 80 hours a week. If we were in town, we worked. So the only time we'd get a vacation is when we left. Otherwise we were working. I don't think people do that anymore.
Are there other ideas as to how to make a good impression on the judge, or is it mostly just born of your preparation and presenting things in a logical way? So
common sense, being respectful, and knowing what the facts are, being prepared. So many judges, you can look at them and watch them when somebody comes in front of them that isn't prepared and isn't generally ever prepared. They're just treated differently. So if you just treat the judge with respect, come to court prepared, work, you'll do good.
As far as preparation, I find that if I get swept away on a case that's going to trial, I don't begrudge the time. I'm swept up in it. And, it's not unusual to do a 12, 13, 14-hour day in those circumstances. Did you have the same kind of feeling that when you have a big case, you're swept away into it and, there's not a lot else going on in the world?
Well, and criminally it works different because it doesn't take that long to prepare versus a civil case. But yeah, we work on it, do all the things you have to do, take all the discovery that you needed to, get the statements from the cops, file your motions to suppress, do all those things. Yes.
Well, you talked a little bit about the time commitment, and a purpose of this program is to, we don't want to necessarily we don't want to sugarcoat anything. The primary purpose of the program is to help newer and younger lawyers to understand, in a sense, if you're going to be a litigator, and in your case, a criminal defense lawyer, help them know what they're getting into in terms of time commitment and focus on the job.
Well, if you're a family man, you can forget about that because there's not enough room to do what needs to be done criminally to keep your clients happy, keep prepared, be ready for court. So if you want to know how it affects my family life, you can ask my 4 or 5 former wives, and they'll be glad to help you with that advice. So it's very difficult to be a lawyer and have a happy, functional family. Now, things have changed, and maybe we were doing it wrong. Maybe we shouldn't have taken that much time. Maybe we shouldn't have taken that many cases, but it's a profession that is extremely time demanding.
Well, as far as, driving to that level of commitment, was it, Will, for you, was it just passion, focused passion for your clients, or or you just knew you had to get it done, or how, what drove you?
I guess the concern was 1142s. So if you're going to take clients and you're going to practice law, especially in murder cases or cases that involve lots of time, people go to jail forever, then you have to do a good job. If you don't, then you're going to have the Bar Association beating on you. You're going to have these clients filing 1142s and having hearings to set aside the work that you did. So it's a chore.
Well, What do you like best about being a litigator?
I love trying cases. I just think it's a turn on. It's powerful. It's everything that you see on Perry Mason. You actually live it. I love to cross-examine people. I love to do voir dire. So I just enjoy the whole concept. It's just very time consuming. What used to still does upset me, you'll get a case that's a case that's tribal, and not all cases are, obviously, but you get a case that's tribal, you work your butt off, you get it all prepared, you're ready to go to trial, and then the prosecutor makes you an offer you can't refuse. And people have to remember, especially young lawyers, it's not their decision how the case is handled. It's or your decision. It's their decision. So if they want to plead guilty, there ain't nothing you can do about it. So the cases that you want to try end up getting settled, and the cases you don't want to try that you get killed on are the ones that end up going to trial. You really have very little effect over that. So remember, you all, that it's your client's decision whether to plead guilty or not guilty, not yours.
Well, I mean, in the roughest ballpark estimate, you know, how many jury trials do you think you've had
Oh,
over the
geez.
years?
People ask me that. And it used to be some years ago that we tried 2 a day. So hundreds for sure. Whether somebody asks me, do you think I've tried 1,000? That's a lot of cases, a lot of time and a lot of work. Probably doubt it, but I've tried a bunch.
Well, and this may sound like a little bit of a silly question, but you know, as far as your style with the jury, are you trying to be their friends? Are you trying to lead them? Are you maybe all the above? I mean, what are you trying to just be all about the facts? Here are the facts. Here's why we should win. I mean, do
What
you
you're
have a
trying to
certain
do
approach?
is sell your client's story of innocence and whatever it takes to do that. So I love talking to people in that setting. I was never the kind of person that could just go out and talk to a stranger about nothing. But when you're trying cases, that's what it boils down to. So I'm trying to bring out the facts that are important. I'm trying to get a jury to step into my client's shoes without violating the golden rule, and talk to them about why your client's not guilty and why they should find not guilty. People forget about what a powerful tool reasonable doubt is, and trying to sell that to a jury and make them understand without defining it, which you can do in a backwards way, what it's all about. And if you can convince people what reasonable doubt means, all you have to do is get one of those jurors to go your way and you win. When I say you win, it's actually a hung jury, but that's a win.
Have you done a lot of, any high tech jury selection, any sort of uh, focus groups with some of your larger cases? Have you made that a part of your practice?
The problem that most criminal defense lawyers have is they have clients who don't have any money. So you can't do focus groups if you don't pay the people to come in and do it. So have I done them? Yeah, I have. Are they effective? Sure they are. Are they worth the money that you spend to do them? Probably not. But yeah, I will take my staff, Anita Randall, and other people that work around here, and take them into the conference room and run down a set of facts and get their thoughts about what's important to you and what's not, and what do you think about and how do you feel about, and get their thoughts that way.
I like that. Well, are there certain challenges and opportunities that you'd consider to be sort of unique to being a criminal defense lawyer? And in
Well, I
terms of
think
how you deal with clients, how you handle the financial aspects of that, perhaps?
as far as financial aspects, one thing I can give you advice would be do contracts for employment so you have your fees locked in, because people are so distressed about lawyers and the fees that they charge if they're not happy. My experience too has been, if you get somebody who pays timely, pays what they ought to pay, and you don't get a successful outcome, the people that pay, are appreciative of what you've done for them and what you're trying to do. You get somebody that doesn't pay, you get them a great outcome and they're not happy. So it's like, what the hell? That's why you get it in writing.
And operate on retainers whenever you can, I suppose, right?
Yes.
As far as interacting with the client base that is a criminal defendant, are there certain particular challenges? I mean, and the reason why I say that is I in civil law, I understand that a lot of the clients I work with are very upset about being sued, and I'm a defense lawyer. But in the criminal realm, it seems to me very different. Now we're talking about liberty. And the thing you're working on is the most important thing in their lives. And that has to be create some interesting dynamics as you're interacting with your clients. And I guess the bottom line of this little question is just how do you manage help the client to manage the emotions and the difficulties they're experiencing?
Well, you have to be a teacher, you have to be a counselor, in addition to being a lawyer. And if I can tell you one thing to do, learn how to say no. So if you get somebody in, you interview them, it's a two-way street. They've got to decide whether they want you. You need to decide whether you want them. So there's so many times that you should say, thanks, it's been real. I'll see you later, and tell them to go down the street and see somebody else. Just
Right.
learn how to say no, because it's a problem. The biggest chore is getting people to come to court on time. Be there a half an hour early. I'll be there 45 minutes early. They're 15 minutes late, and you call them and they're 15 minutes away. And you think, what the hell, man? Are you nuts? Because the judges see it, they don't like it, and they'll punish your client. So the practice of law is many faceted. Counselors, I call my clients at least once a week on these cases and make them feel at home. Let them know where they're going and what you've got planned, get their thoughts, and they appreciate that. And they will not file an 1142 if you do those things, because you become more of a friend or as much a friend as you are their lawyer. So take the time to talk to your clients.
Well, you've referenced the 1142 a couple of times, and I'm not familiar with that term, other than I presume from our conversation it's ineffective assistance of counsel, right?
Exactly what it is.
Yeah. And so the kinds of relationships that you have with clients, the quality of your clientele, I mean, I don't know though, a person who I don't know if it's related to socioeconomics. I could see a person who's more well-to-do filing something like that just as easily as I can see someone who's less well-to-do. I mean, it's all about, in the end, the kind of work you're doing and the types of people that you're working for, I suppose, that would generate those kinds of motions. And I guess you've gotten them before, right?
1142, anybody that's practiced law is going to get an 1142. So you have to violate the rule, you have to do something that's not reasonable, and you have to actually show prejudice to them. The landmark case is Strickland, and as a coincidence, the lawyer who tried Strickland, which is a U.S. Supreme Court case, ended up trying a case in London, drug case, with him being the lawyer representing the co-defendant. And what a treat that was to have somebody that talented. But if you talk about 1142s, I represented a guy named Eugene Gall, who was the first person that got the death penalty under Kentucky's new death penalty law. Of course, they filed an 1142. That 1142 took 20 years to finally dispose of. And the Sixth Circuit ultimately reversed it and said, you know what? Wilbur was right, but it took 20 some odd years to get that done.
Get there.
And the interesting thing is, after I tried that case, the public defenders who supposedly helped me, I was the one who started the damn program, came in here and sat in my office and said, I think that you did a good job, but we're not sure you were effective. Would you mind me? They wanted me to sign an affidavit saying, you could have done a better job and this outcome is your fault. So knowing that I wanted to continue being Perry Mason, I said, thanks, but no thanks.
Well, hearing about how your career started, and often in these interviews, I kind of compare it to how mine developed. And, we're in two different areas of the law with two very different paths. For me, developing clients included joining a club, going to dinners, some speeches and presentations, and some volunteering. And I get the sense that that's not at all how your book of business developed. How did you do it?
Well, you're absolutely right. I am not a people person and never have been. My partners wanted me to join clubs, and I didn't play golf. I just didn't like socializing, didn't drink that much. Occasionally there'd be an exception to that. But generally speaking, I developed my business by trying cases. So there's two ways to get business. Number one, you can do it the way people taught us maybe 20, 30 years ago, which is advertise. The other way is person to person. You try people, try their cases, do a good job for them, and tell those people, listen, if you were happy with my work and somebody needs a lawyer, tell them to come see me. So you build it under the pyramiding system by doing good work for your clients, trying cases, get in the front of the line, put on a show. The judge knows you're going to do it. Prosecutor knows you're going to do it. Do it. That's how you get business.
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But one of the things I love about this program is the different perspectives and the different experiences. And, your comment that, well, I'm not really a people person, you don't want to go out and have a drink and that sort of thing with regularity. And yet you ended up being one of Northern Kentucky's greatest trial lawyers, which involves connecting with people in that jury box. And you do it based on substance. And I guess I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Will. As far as the time frames for you getting what I would call a full plate of work, from the time you started and you were taking whatever business you could get from your buddy for fixing his motorcycle, how long did it take you to get, up to speed with a full plate of work? Was it a few years or was it pretty quick?
No, it's years. But the more cases you try and the more people that unfortunately get in trouble, the more business you get. So certainly years, a couple years. So it's hard times. If you're a new lawyer and you're coming out and you don't have people sending you business, then that's not good. And if you're a young lawyer and you find somebody that you like the way they try cases and the way they represent people, go up and ask them if they care if you second chair it. So I'll let people do that. I've always been of the belief that the more you can help lawyers look like lawyers and be successful, the more it helps the entire profession. There's nothing worse than watching a talented lawyer who knows somebody's going up in front of the judge and is going to mess it up because you can listen to him talk. Go to those people and say, hey, do you know? And some of them aren't very appreciative, think you're trying to tell them how to do it. Well, it's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what they need. So just make yourself available to help people.
Well, and when I introduced you, we talked a little bit about your service to the profession. What were some of your favorite opportunities to serve the profession, and why were they your favorites?
Well, I like to teach people how to effectively try cases. And I still, to this day, steal business from people. I put on seminars, KACDL, which is Kentucky Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, probably more than anybody, but NKBA, the Kentucky bar, but all those things you're teaching people the effective way to try cases. So I enjoy doing that and always will. And those seminars, I tell people, if you have a question, call, because I'll be happy to help you. And some of them do.
Well, this public defender program that you were involved in and that you helped form, how did that come about? What's the history there?
The state public defenders wanted to take over the entire business and run all the public defenders. And over the years, they have slowly chipped away at these individual programs. And now I think the only independent program besides the main state program is out of Louisville, I think. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, a problem because there are so many people who are represented by the public defenders who are just overwhelmed by the amount of business that they have to do. There's no way they can keep up. But they shouldn't be allowed to have public defenders because they can afford real lawyers. Probably shouldn't say real lawyers, not public defender lawyers. That's
I understand.
Nothing more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know you had this leadership role with Kentucky Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. I don't know a lot about that group. What do they do?
Well, they're a group. You have to be a defense lawyer. You can't be a prosecutor. And they mostly put on seminars, some short, some long, of issues that are the hot topics, ways to win jury trials, things to look for, dirty tricks, and that sort of thing. And we have a number of seminars every year. And I think it's a very good way for young lawyers who can get a discount on joining to come on over and be a member.
Well, I also noticed we have this thing in common, co-authoring a book. Tell us what it was like to co-author this book, Kentucky Driving Under the Influence, law book. I understand it's widely read. Why'd you do it, and what did it mean to your career over the years?
Well, I thought it would be nice since it's never been done in Kentucky. And so many of the judges and the prosecutors weren't current on DUI law. Why would they be? So I thought, well, this is a perfect time. So I held myself out to the publisher, who said, okay. Now I had some help through Mark Painter, who was a judge in the Hamilton County he was in Muni court, but he wrote the Ohio original version of the DUI book. Him and Jim Looker did same thing. So I had help and organization from them, but I just thought it needed to be done, and it's been out more than 20 years. It's rewritten every year, and it's a treatise on DUI. So it's not a defense book. It's not a prosecutor's book. It's an educational book. So if you have DUI practice, get the book.
We do have a segment in each of these programs that relates to professional responsibility issues. Are there any particularly risky areas of professional responsibility that arise in your criminal defense practice? And
if you're going to practice criminal law, then you got to be aware of 1142s. And when you start dealing with serious offenses like murder, rape, robbery, arson, things like that, your client is going to get a bunch of years. And if he's going to get a bunch of years, then he's going to be an unhappy camper. And there's not much you can tell him, because if you say, hey, you're going to jail for a long time, they will get a different lawyer probably, because they're looking for somebody to say, hey, I can get you out of this, or hey, I can cut down your sentence, or hey, don't be doing what you're doing. Not a good idea to practice those types of cases. Choose to say no, or get somebody involved who's an old timer who's been down that road and can help you.
Well, it sounds like on the 1142 front, it's partly about the client and the outcome, but it's, I suppose, mostly about back to what you mentioned at the early part of the program, being well prepared, doing your
Well,
best.
and sometimes you get trapped. Like I was in a murder case. There was a defendant and a co-defendant. The main client was represented by a lawyer out of Lexington. The other client, Judge Ford, in his infinite wisdom, said, "Mr. Zevely, I'm appointing you to represent this other guy." Well, wasn't my case. I was a public defender. Why in the hell he's telling me I have to and you can't? What am I going to say? No, because that doesn't work. So we tried the case. We lost. Both of our people got death, and we got an 1142 for somebody who was appointed. We got paid nothing for it. Angeles, it was the other lawyer, got an 1142. Then the guy sues us civilly too. So that's your dime, you pay. So I had to defend a criminal case, had to defend the 1142, had to defend the civil case. So just be aware.
Well, what are your thoughts about, practicing in our Northern Kentucky region, how lawyers behave, how they treat one another, and whether it's changed over the years?
It's changed dramatically over the years where people don't help. They're not making themselves available to the younger members of the bar. So easy to do, and it's just not happening. So I think that the state of lawyers getting along and sharing information is basically terrible. So I again encourage people to don't do that. Go back to the old days.
The idea would be that we all together have a vested interest in assuring that the quality of law is at its highest level. And that includes spending time with one another and helping one another.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that very much. In terms of civility, whether people are treating each other, generally speaking, with respect, sounds like it's not today what it once was. But what are your experiences now with how lawyers are treating one another when it comes to representing their clients? Are they handling it appropriately in terms of how they interact professionally?
Really not. They could spend more time. Some of my seminars I talk about being a babysitter. When you actually have to babysit these people to get them to court on time, to behave, to get them to be respectful to the court, because so many of them are just wise asses. They dress inappropriately. So for God's sake, tell your clients not to be wearing shorts to court. Or went to court one day, the guy's got on a t-shirt with a huge marijuana plant right in the front. What's he charged with? A drug offense. Well, that ain't real right, but he got a lot of attention. So there you go.
Well, how many years have you've been practicing, Will?
51.
51. And I guess an iteration of your firm was born about 50 years ago, a prior iteration.
72.
Right. Yeah. Well, looking back on those years, what do you think have been your biggest challenges practicing law?
Taking the time to be adequately prepared is the biggest one. So it's just a chore. And I think you have to enjoy yourself and have fun trying cases. And I don't know that it's a good thing to tell people you're having fun because it's such a serious business. I tried a case which was very humorous, where my client was charged with burning a apartment complex down in the Ohio River. And Frank Trusty was the prosecutor. And the defense was they had this big, huge, white, puffy cat. And our defense was, and there was lighter fluid or some flammables in the apartment, that the cat walking around and rubbing up against people and things made sparks, and the sparks set off the can of solvents, and that's what burned down the apartment complex. So lo and behold, the jury agreed. Frank was not a happy camper, but at any rate, cases like that don't come along forever, but they're fun when you get one.
Outside the practice of law, what are some of your greatest sources of satisfaction in your life?
Well, a bunch of them. I love to boat. My law partner, Michael McMahon, and I skied for years out west, and we'd ski. But when I say a lot, we'd ski a week, a month, 5 months a year. And then we started taking sailboat cruises where we would bareboat, which means we would rent the sailboats and sail them in the British Virgin Islands, like 60-foot sailboats, which was a chore. And we'd go out and sail them by ourselves. What a trip. So just things like that.
Well, I mean, I understand that after 51 years, you don't have any intention of stepping away. I'm in year 35. I want to make it to 51 years. So what do I need to do to get there? To have the energy and stamina and focus to make year 50 in a practice.
Well, it's a god awful amount of time. It goes by awfully quick. You have to stay in shape, physically work out, watch your diet. So Bill McAvoy, who I've spoken about a little bit, was a very successful lawyer around here. And he said it takes three things to make money. It takes your health, takes some ability, and it takes clients. So those are the three things that you have to be successful in practicing law.
Well, as we near the end of the program, are there any other war stories that you'd care to share with us from your 51 years of practice? Anything that comes to mind?
There's a bunch of them. Most of them are inappropriate that I could tell, but I'd get in trouble, so I'll pass on that.
Well, I enjoyed the Spark, the cat Spark case. I enjoyed hearing about that. Uh, so there, I mean, you've had, I
Okay,
guess.
I'll tell this one. I'll try to be as appropriate as I can. Represented a guy charged with first-degree assault. Him and his companion were in a little shed, sexually, both males, doing things which some people would think was inappropriate. And my client removed his coat or his victim's part, cut it off. And it was snowing outside. So he walks home and leaves a track of blood in the snow. So his sister sees him in bed, sees what's happened, calls the cops. The cops go out there and follow the path of blood drippings to the defendant. Only in America.
Yes, and I think some of my harassment type cases are interesting, but they pale in comparison. And now I get why you said that you couldn't necessarily share the details because yes, that's
wrong day, wrong time, wrong place.
So did you represent the person who removed the appendage?
I did.
How did that go?
Well, the victim didn't want to testify because he didn't want people parading around his missing part, which the police had in a jar with a solution. So the guy ended up getting probation.
The part was evidence.
Yeah, sure. You have to have him stripped down in court, or you have to have some proof of it. So they had it in a jar.
Well, I know you've had a fairly public life, at least in the courtroom, but I know a lot of people know you. I mean, you were the distinguished lawyer in Northern Kentucky, so you can't be a completely private person and receive that sort of accolade. But is there something maybe not widely known by others that folks might find interesting about you?
Gee, history wise,
Well, or just some interest or hobby or experience that wouldn't be widely known. But I mean, for me, for example, I very much enjoyed having the opportunity to be an Elvis impersonator on a couple of different occasions.
well,
I
I
don't
was
think I was very good at it, but
I was the head drummer for the University of Kentucky Marching 100 band for 4 years, 3 years. So we used to march on the football field like you see in football games and basketball games. So the neat thing about doing that, being the drummer, was I could get the best seats at Rupp for the basketball games. Now, it may not have been Rupp then. I think it was Memorial Coliseum. But at any rate, too neat.
well, the drumming too. I mean, you probably if we had a set of drums set up, you could probably
Oh, for
probably
sure.
make yeah, yeah. My brother-in-law was a drummer too, and you said it was at what university was it at UK?
University of Kentucky, yeah.
I'll be darned. Well, do you have any final words of wisdom, wit, or advice for the next generation of lawyers in Northern Kentucky?
Best thing I can tell you is to educate yourself, go to as many seminars as you possibly can, try to hook up with mentors, people who will help you and give you good advice, and enjoy yourself. Don't do stupid things. Don't try to get people to lie. Don't steal their money, and practice good law.
Well, it looks like we've got a couple of follow-ups here in the Q&A and
Uh-oh.
chat features. Oh, I really like this one.
It's probably from McMain.
No, this is from Rob Ziegler. These are two great questions. Thank you, Rob. What is your most memorable case over your 51 years of practice?
Probably Eugene Gall, the death penalty case, right after Kentucky enacted the new death penalty.
Yeah.
After the Supreme Court threw it out, that's probably the biggest.
That's one that stays with you.
Well, it
Right.
bothers you because even after, I guess it's been 40 years now, it's somebody's life you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not nice people that you're dealing with. So, what's his second part?
Well, another good question. Have you ever been afraid of a client you were representing?
Hell yeah, man. Geez, we had one case where the victim was in the car, the defendant was outside of the car, and they were arguing. The victim reaches for her gun. My guy beats her to the draw and blasts her and kills her. And the family for the victim made threats on my life to the point that I installed an alarm system and had a 357 on my pillow. So I was worried about those people coming after me. So does it happen? Hell yeah. I asked Mark Stanziano's people. His client walks up the street trying to talk to Mark. Mark's going, hi, how you doing? Guy pulls a pistol on him, kills him dead. You never know. We're not dealing with normal people like you go out and run into generally. So
Well, what do you do about it? I mean,
run.
you protect yourself,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Get yourself out of harm's way. Right.
Get a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you can't take him to court, but it's concerning sometimes. The security that we have is very well done, but how easy would it be to slip a gun through there?
Well, on behalf of the Northern Kentucky Bar, I want to thank you sincerely for all you've done for us over the years. I hope that we've been good to you too. And you were talking earlier in your presentation about how important it was to spend time with the newer lawyers, the younger lawyers, and help them along. And you've done that today. So here you are again, trying to help the next generation of lawyers. And as we wrap up,
questions?
No,
you guys have questions, call me. I'll be happy to help you.
Thank you, Will. Well, we have a special thanks then to the live attendees today. We really appreciate your support and your interest in the program. Our executive director, Julie Jones, is going to be sending you CLE information for ethics credits, and we want your suggestions. We started this program 3 years ago, and by the end of this year, we'll have 22 one-hour videos of different lawyers who've distinguished themselves in our legal community. And we look forward to posting them on our website. And we look forward to this coming year, 2024. We want a new slate of people to interview so that we can make sure that we have every perspective reflected in the body of videos that are this program. So towards that end, for anyone who's a live attendee, please reach out to us with your suggestions as to who would be a good person to interview. I have a few in mind already, people with different backgrounds who found their way to Northern Kentucky in kind of an indirect way, but ended up leaving a real mark and helped a lot of people here in Northern Kentucky. So send us your suggestions. Will, do you have anything else for the good of the order as we wrap up?
Just practice good law. If you need help, call me or call some of the old timers that have been doing this forever. They're full of knowledge that they will be happy to share with you. And for those of you who practice criminal law, please join KACDL. We need your help and your input.
Thanks again, and to everyone, we appreciate the support, the continuing interest. Everybody have a terrific day.